Good day again, everyone. Welcome back to the poker vlog. It is currently 4 PM on a Wednesday afternoon. This is a bit of a later start to me, so we are in a bit of a rush to get to Crown before the traffic absolutely kills me. So tonight, I'm going to just play a bit of cash. The 5-5 game got up last night, so definitely put our name on the list for that, see if it gets up again. But if not, back to the regular 2-5 grind. Let's go. Currently 5 o'clock here at Crown, so we actually did really well with the traffic. Usually when I leave at 4 it takes me about an hour and a half to get into Crown, so the fact that it only took an hour, I'm considering that running good already. Now it's time to head into the poker room. Hopefully we can take some of that traffic run good and convert it into poker run good, and chuck my name on the 2-5 list and see if we can't get some interesting hands to go over with everyone. So we've currently chucked our name on the 2-5 list. There's only one table of 2-5 running at the moment. Hey, it is 1 AM here at Crown Casino. I am wrapping up my 2-5 session for the evening. We didn't play any high stakes than the 2-5 game, but we did play plenty of pots that were over 1K, so hopefully if you do enjoy the high stakes action, this 2-5 played pretty big, so should get some interesting hand histories for us to go over. I'm heading back to my car now. I'm going to head straight home, but we'll get the hand histories out to you. Interesting hand we have. I'm in the cutoff with Ace Queen. There is an under the gun raise, and then two people call in between. Then the action's on me. I go ahead and 3-bet Ace Queen. This is definitely a strong hand that's going to be ahead of the under the gun raiser's opening range, so raising it straight up for value. And then the action folds back around to the under the gun opener, and he goes ahead and throws in the 4-bet. He makes it 210. Then the two field callers fold, and the action's back on me, and I actually go ahead and fold here. I think whilst Ace Queen was ahead of the under the gun opener's raising range, when he does go ahead and decide to mix in the 4-bet, that's representing a very strong range of hands, stuff like aces, kings, ace king, queens, jacks, all stuff that Ace Queen, he probably isn't going to perform that well against. So I just go ahead and make the fold there. So down 85 on the first hand we play, unfortunately. In the next hand, I'm in middle position with pocket nines. I raise it up to 15, and then both the button and the big blind call. So we're three ways to a flop. the flop is king 8 deuce rainbow. The action checks to me, and I actually decide to check here. I definitely think there could be some merit to betting for thin value, but also to deny equity to overcards. But I think checking works as well, just to try and pot control a bit here with a pretty marginal hand. And then the button checks as well. So we're still 3 ways to the turn. The turn is the 4 of hearts, which puts out a backdoor flush draw. The big blind checks to me again. In this spot, I think I really do want to bet for value. I think it's pretty unlikely that the big blind or the button has a king, since they're pretty likely to bet it earlier in the hand. So I'm going to go here and try and get called by a flush draw, or potentially a worse pair than pocket nines here. Then the action's on the button, he folds, and then the action gets back around to the big blind, and he actually decides to raise it up to 155. I was pretty surprised to see the big blind check raise here. But now that he has, I have to think about what hands could he possibly have. Well, when he check raises, he's representing a strong hand like 2 pair or a set. He could have definitely flopped a set with 8s or 2s, or turned a set with pocket 4s, that I would believe. And he could also have some 2 pairs, like when he's getting a good price to call in the big blind, he definitely have a king 4 suited, a king 8 suited, or even a 4-2 suited wouldn't be totally out of the question. So those are obviously the hands I'm concerned about him having when he check raises. And it's also somewhat possible he did turn a heart draw, most likely an ace high heart draw that he's going for the check raise with as a semi bluff. But when you put all those hands in his range, pocket nines doesn't do that well against that range. And the fact that we do have the 9 of hearts makes me even more inclined to fold. But even if I had black nines or something, it'd still be a pretty sick spot. But I do go ahead and fold there, and the big blind takes down that pot. So 0 for 2 so far in the vlog. Let's see if we can change our luck around in this next hand. So the low jack, who was actually the big blind in the previous hand, who did the check raise, he opens to 20, and the action folds to me on the button. I have my second favourite hand in all of poker, pocket kings. Obviously gonna 3-bet this hand. I go ahead and make it 70, then the action folds back to the low jack, and he calls. So we're heads up to a flop of 8-8-3 rainbow. The low jack checks it over to me. I think this is a really good spot to bet for value with my pocket kings. Obviously he has a bunch of pocket pairs that are gonna open call, and they're probably gonna be tempted to call on a flop like this. But also, if he does have an ace high hand or a Broadway hand, if I bet small, I can still get called by those hands. So I go ahead and bet 45, and then the low jack does call. So still heads up to the turn. The turn is the 10 of hearts, which puts out a backdoor flush draw. The low jack checks it over to me, and I think I still want to bet for value on this card. If my opponent did call the flop with 2 Broadway cards that have hearts, he now has a flush draw, so I can bet to get value from that. He also might have a 10 if he had like ace 10, and also if he does have a pocket pair like 9s, 7s, I think he might be tempted to call me down, but maybe not. But either way, I'm still going to try and get value. I go ahead and bet 120, and then the low jack goes ahead and calls. So still heads up to a river. I have about 265 behind. So when the river is the 2 of spades and the low jack goes ahead and checks again, I don't really think I have a choice but to go all in here. I think if my opponent did have an 8, he'd be very tempted to go all in on the turn. Same story with pocket 10s most likely. So I think I'm going to have the best hand here most of the time, and obviously the shove isn't that big at all, so I just put it all in for 265, and then the low jack player thinks for a bit before folding. So looks like our luck's turned around. We are now 1 for 3, and we rake in that pot with my second favourite hand in poker. So this next hand, I'm in the low jack with queen jack of clubs. The under the gun +2 player raises up for 20, so I'm next to act, and I don't mind any 3 of my options here. I could absolutely see just folding when the under the gun +2 player raises. That's likely to be a very strong hand, and queen jack might be behind. Having said that though, I don't mind 3-betting either, just because Queen Jack might be behind, but it's actually a very strong hand itself and it might be ahead. So you can 3-bet and get called and then get to play a pot in position against the early position raiser and give everyone else in the hand a worse price to try and call. Having said that though, I do go ahead and just call with the Queen Jack here. I think Queen Jack is a strong hand, but I'm not looking to inflate the pot against an early position raiser. But I am looking to play post flop, so calling is what I decide to do. But I honestly don't mind any 3 options. And then the action folds to the button, he calls, and then we are 3 ways to a flop. And it's a pretty good flop. King, 10, 9, rainbow. We flop the nuts. That's always fun. The action's on the pre-flop raiser. He actually decides to check here. So the action's on me now. The pot's $60. I think 10 times out of 10, this is just a straight bet. Obviously for value with the nuts, I can get called by any king. There's a bunch of gut shots. If anyone has a hand like 10 queen, 10 jack, they're very likely to call. Either of these players could have that. There's the button he called, he could definitely have 10-9, king 10, king 9. Like, there's so many hands I can get value from if I bet. So I go ahead and make it 40. If I had the decision back, I might even bet bigger, just because there are so many hands that are going to be tempted to call on this flop. So, but I do decide to make it 40, and then I get a call from the button, and the pre-flop raiser also calls. So we are still 3 ways to a turn. The turn is a 2 of diamonds. It's about the biggest brick you can get in the deck. It does put out a backdoor flush draw, but obviously I'm loving life with the nuts here. The pre-flop raiser checks it to me again. I feel the same way on the turn as I did on the flop. I want to keep betting this hand for value. The fact that I got 2 callers on the flop, it's very likely someone has a king. The pre-flop raiser, he could just be playing check call all the way with a hand like ace king, pocket aces. The person on the button could have 2 pair potentially. I'm not necessarily sure they'd raise on a rainbow flop. So I just have to bet this straight for value, obviously. I go ahead and bet 180, which is the size of the pot. And then the button folds, and then the action's on the pre-flop aggressor. And he thinks about it for a bit, and then decides to go all in for 440. Obviously, I almost break my wrist snap calling. I show the nuts, and then he shows pocket 9s. So he actually flopped bottom set when I made the nuts straight. Obviously, this is a sick cooler. There's about $1,000 in the pot now, and I'm just hoping the river does not pair the board. And then the river is a offsuit 4. So the board doesn't pair, and we scoop in the $1,000 pot. And I definitely think my luck on this session has turned around. In this next hand, I'm in the big blind with King Jack. There's a raise from middle position to 15, and getting a price in the big blind with a hand as strong as King Jack, I think this is a pretty good spot to call, which is what I do. So we are heads up to a flop, and the flop's another good one. It is Jack, Jack 6 rainbow. So definitely can't complain about running bad when we flop the nut straight one hand and trips the next. So the action's on me. I go ahead and check to the pre-flop aggressor, and he goes ahead and bets 20. So the action's back on me now. I have the choice between calling to slow play or going for the check raise to try and get some value. I decide to check raise to 70. I decided to check raise just because we are over 1,000 effective with villain, and I'm really looking to build a pot here with a hand as strong as trips. When my opponent c-bets 20 into this board, he could definitely have pocket pairs that are going to call. He could it'd be absolutely sick, but he could have a worse jack than I would. He could also have a better jack though. He's likely to open all the offsuit combinations of ace jack, so that's definitely something to be wary of, as well as pocket sixes, but not too worried about the cooler, just raising for straight value, looking to get called by a pocket pair. So I make it 70, and then the middle position player calls. Good news. So we're heads up to the turn. The turn is an 8 of hearts, which does put out a backdoor flush draw, but not too concerned about backdoor flush draws. I go ahead and bet 120 for value. I want to size up here. I think this turn card changes nothing. If my opponent did bet call with pocket eights, he now has a full house. That's about it though. I think it's more likely he has a stronger pocket pair than that, and I want to bet the max to try and get value from that, particularly when I'm deep stacked with villain. And so I decide to bet 120, and then he calls. Yeah, still heads up to the river, and the river is the 7 of diamonds. This is a bit of an interesting river card because now 10-9 is a straight, and obviously my trips would lose to that. Having said that though, I'm not worried at all about my opponent having 10-9. If he did bet that on the flop, he's definitely a good, well, I can't say 100% that he's going to fold when I raise, but I think it's very likely that he would. So I'm not too worried about him having a straight. I still want to bet for value here to try and get one of those pocket pairs to call. Anything from pocket nines, pocket tens, pocket queens, pocket kings and pocket aces, all hands my villain could definitely have. He's going to be tempted to call on the river. So I go ahead and bet 300, nice and big, to try and get max value. And then my opponent doesn't think too long before calling. So I go ahead and show my king jack, and then he mucks. So definitely running hot this session, flopping monsters, and somehow getting paid off. I'll go through this next hand pretty quickly because I don't think it's that interesting, but I was pretty happy when it happened. So the under the gun player raises for 20. I'm in the big blind with my second favourite hand in all of poker, pocket kings. I 3-bet to 80, and then the under the gun player goes ahead and 4-bets to 220. He started with about 500, so my decision here is pretty easy. He has 500, I have pocket kings, I'm all in. Then the under the gun player calls, I show my kings, the board runs out, queen high, and then the under the gun player mucks. So win that $1,000 pot, getting pocket kings all in pre-flop. The run good continues again. Alright, next hand. I have my favourite hand in all of poker, pocket aces. I go ahead and raise it up to 15, and I get a call from the button. So we are heads up to a flop. The flop is king, king, 8, rainbow. I think in this spot, something I've been saying a lot tonight, I have a pretty clear value bet here. I go ahead and make it 15, trying to get called by pocket pairs. Any 8 will call, maybe even backdoor flush draws, or some ace high hands will call if I bet a bit smaller. So I go ahead and bet 15, and then the button calls. So we are heads up to a turn still, which is the 10 of clubs, which puts out a backdoor flush draw. So now there's more stuff I can get called by because there is a flush draw. Also, queen jack is a straight draw. But having bet the flop and getting called, I do have some concern that my opponent does have a king. I think king, queen, king, jack, king, 10 are hands my opponent's going to play when they're on the button. And also maybe even king, 9 suited as well. But also pocket 10s is definitely a hand my opponent can have. They might, if they have pocket 8s, they might slow play on the flop. They might raise though, so a bit less concerned about that, but somewhat of a possibility. But I still want to bet here to try and get called by draws or single pair hands. I go ahead and make it 25, and then the button player goes ahead and raises. I was definitely concerned about this happening, but when he does raise, I think I still want to call here, which is what I go ahead and do. Obviously I have a very strong hand with aces, and if my opponent is bluffing with a straight draw or a flush draw, I don't want to be blown off. One of the strongest hands I can have in this spot. Also pocket aces is my favourite hand, so not looking to fold it just yet. So I go ahead and call the 70. So we are still heads up to a river, which is the 2 of clubs. Obviously this isn't the best river in the world for my pocket aces. If my opponent did bluff raise the turn with a flush draw, they now have the best hand. Plus, still somewhat concerned they could have a king or even a full house themselves. So definitely not looking to bet here. I go ahead and check it to the button. Then the button goes ahead and bets 65. This bet is so gross because it's very, very small. I'm getting a very, very good price to bluff catch with my pocket aces here. Having said that though, I lose to so many hands. I lose to a flush, to any king to full houses. It's just like there's so much I lose to, and I really want to fold, but the fact I do have a hand as strong as pocket aces and he bets so small, I get a bit too tempted and I do go ahead and throw in the call, only to be shown Queen Jack of clubs. So my opponent turned a straight flush draw, and then they got there on the river. I guess they are going to get there on the river with so many outs. I did make the call with the ace of clubs, which in theory is meant to make it more likely that my opponent's bluffing, because I know they don't have the nut flush draw, but I think in this spot calling is a mistake just because they have so many strong hands. So naturally after that hand, I just shot out of my seat and stormed out of the casino. Can't believe I run that bad, that my aces get cracked. It was the worst. Nah, I'm just kidding. Obviously, ran very good over the course of this session. So that's going to wrap it up for the vlog today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my content, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can go ahead and follow me on Instagram at LeeBets, one word. And if you do have any constructive criticism, I'm all ears. We did get some shots from inside the casino, which I know a lot of people have asked me about, so hopefully you liked that. And we're going to be bringing out more and more vlogs for you guys as long as you keep wanting to see them. So thank you so much for watching.